Good morning, good morning. Welcome everybody to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm Studebaker Carl, broadcasting to you live from beautiful Southwest Georgia. I'm here with my good friends Christina, Dan, Danielle, Donna, Jason, and Sandy. And we are about to talk about 5 steps that can control your success and failure. Now, if you haven't been here with us before, you probably are not aware of what we're doing. And so let me just kind of share with you a little bit about that. Of course, we get together every week and we talk about different personal development books. And this week we're talking about the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. And the topic actually is from Chapter 8. Is that right? Yep, Chapter 8, the Self-Management Sequence. And so we're going to be talking about these 5 steps that control your success and failure. But before we get going on that, I want to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves and just say where you are in the world. And that includes those of you who are watching. And by the way, before I go forward any further, if you happen to, I don't know where you are on the web watching this video, but if you would like to participate in our live ongoing conversation, to be able to add comments so that we can see and include your thoughts in our conversation, jump to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. That's SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. That will take you to our live Google Plus event page where you'll be able to add your thoughts and comments to the conversation. So for those of you who are watching, go ahead and just let us know where you are in the world. And if this is your first time visiting with us, let us know that too. But at any point, feel free to add your thoughts. And so anyway, let's go ahead and just give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. And I'll just be quiet for a minute. Jump on out there, guys.
Good morning, everybody. This is Danielle DeLyons out in Anaheim, California, and excited to be here with y'all.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Smith in Boise, Idaho. Got a beautiful day shaping up here and excited about the call. So welcome, everyone.
Hey everyone, Donna, Raleigh, North Carolina. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Hey everybody, Jason Roberts in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's really great to be back here, and I'm excited about this discussion today.
Hey everyone, Christina Irvin here. I'm in Northeast Tennessee. I'm excited because we got our whole cast and crew here today. This is going to be a good one.
I couldn't hear you, Sandy. Is your microphone? Try again. No. I'm not hearing you. Huh. I don't know. I have to check your audio and see. On my end, you look good. But I couldn't hear anything. Maybe jump off and jump back in? Yeah. Okay, awesome, guys. Sorry that we had that little technical difficulty there. Sometimes we have those issues. That's just part of doing business and broadcasting online, right? So let me just welcome folks that are hanging out with us. Welcome, Roopster. Welcome, BG, Bridget, Ruby Ann, Marsha. Hey, Marsha. Marlene, welcome, welcome. Good to have everybody on here with us this morning. Let's see, who else is on there? Well, okay, that's everybody I'm seeing for right now, but if you're watching and I didn't mention you, go ahead and jump out, put a comment on the page, just let us know, who you are, where you are in the world, and we're happy to have you here. We want to just share with you our thoughts, and we hope that between you and us and everybody that's involved, that we all can learn more and just be more successful in our lives. So, like I was saying, we're studying Chapter 8 of What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And previously, we had kind of talked about some of the things that, let's see, last week we talked about some of the nasty things that we say to ourselves, right? That kind of keep us stuck and then keep us from moving forward, keep us from being the best versions of ourselves. We talked a lot previously in the other chapters about some of the ways that we get these thoughts stuck in our head because if we're saying unpleasant things to ourselves, where'd those things come from? Of course, they came from our programming, and that's what we've talked about on previous sessions. Now, if you're brand new here and you want to know more about what we've talked about previously, you can go to replays.saturdaymorningmastermind.com. You can find all of our previous sessions and then kind of jump in the conversation at those previous points. But so today it says that we've got 5 kind of things that point us in the direction of either success or failure. And one of which is, it says behavior. And then we also talk about our feelings, our attitudes, our beliefs, and our programming, and how each one of those kind of plays a role in the previous one. So the first one it talks about is like the main thing that causes us to have success or failure is our behavior, because if we don't do what is necessary to have success, then obviously if we're not taking the right actions, it's not going to lead to the correct outcome, right? And so in there it's talking about, okay, the step that directly controls our success or failure is our behavior, what we do or what we don't do. Behavior means our actions, how we act, what we do. Each moment of each day will determine whether or not we will be successful in that moment or that day in anything that we do. The right series of the right actions will always end up making things work better than the wrong series of the wrong actions. In most cases, if you do the right thing, you're going to achieve the right results. So let's kind of talk a little bit about our behaviors and how that can affect our outcome. Who wants to kind of jump out and share your thoughts on that first?
Well, there's so many ways. Behaviors in itself is huge, right? Um, I think that for one of the things that jump out at me when I was thinking about this was making sure that your actions are congruent with what your words are in a positive, empowering way. Too often we will say something, but our actions don't mirror what we're saying, almost as if we're not even believing in it ourselves. So I think for me that was the one thing that jumped out at me, and I'm really anxious to see what the panel has to say about that.
I'm right there along with you, Christina, because I was thinking that there's a saying that actions speak louder than words, exactly. There's always a counterpart, just like they used some really good examples on this first area about how a student going to school and they refuse to study and they refuse to pay attention and they miss a lot of their classes and they don't like to be where they're at. Those actions or choices are going to determine a result, and that is that they won't have good grades showing up. They won't be advancing in their knowledge or what they need in life. And so the same goes for anything by our actions and our behavior.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I hated school, and I thought that I was dumb. I thought I was stupid. I thought I was incapable of learning, and most of my time was spent staring out the window. My body was there, but my mind was not, and my grades proved that out. And it's one of the things that the book Psycho-Cybernetics, there's a portion where Maxwell Maltz talks about that whatever behavior, whatever attitude that you take, in a sense, becomes fixed, and then all the evidence points back to it. So you assume an attitude, but then that attitude creates results, and you can look at the results that you got, and those results prove the case that you're trying to make for yourself or against yourself, and it goes both ways. It goes towards the positive, it goes towards the negative, and it doesn't matter which direction you swing, because whatever you believe about yourself is what is your self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak. So I'll let somebody else talk.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't muted, guys. I hope I wasn't jumping in and out of the screen with my background noise. Sandy, can we hear you yet?
Hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yay.
good. I restarted and everything. Okay.
Awesome, awesome. Glad to have you
I didn't know what
on
the
here.
question was, but I'll catch up. Okay. Bye.
Okay, I just wanted to real quick jump out there and say welcome, Christopher. Welcome, Hebron. I saw you just comment on the page. We're glad to have you on here as well. I wanted to say something about the behavior thing, and one thing is that if whatever it is that we're doing, obviously it has some kind of effect on our lives, and if we are behaving, let's just take relationships for example. If we are behaving in such a way that we are, if we feel like we're in a bad marriage, or if we feel like we are not going to get along with our family members, or something like that, if we act in such a way that goes against that positive outcome. So let's just say that you're hanging out with your sister or whatever, and you start saying things to her to push her buttons, then obviously that's a behavior that's going to cause a negative outcome, right? It's going to cause an argument. And a lot of times we do this on purpose. Even if we don't intentionally want to do it, we still do it. And that's what we're talking about, those behaviors, those things that we do that cause negative outcome. And in here it was talking about the job, and if you go to a job and you're unhappy in that job, then you're taking these actions that are not going to be beneficial to you, because maybe you show up late for work, or maybe you don't turn in your work on time, or you do a half-assed job on whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. Those are your behaviors, right? So does anybody else have some examples of some different behaviors that can kind of go against us? What do you think?
I've actually been also listening to, because I love my audiobooks. I've been listening to Grant Cardone's 10x Rule book. And in it, he was talking about how really if we just 10x all of our activity, right, then we would essentially, because we're always going to fall short of our goals. If we're 10x in all of our activity, it would be better to fall short of the 10x goal than it is the 1x goal, essentially. And at first I thought, he's crazy. Then I thought, no, I think he's onto something here. I really think he's onto something here. And when it comes to behavior, if we had a mindset really to go above our typical mindset of being unconscious of the moment, of being dismissive of others, of being inconsiderate, all of these different activities, behaviors. Like if we 10x that in the other direction, imagine what kind of compassionate world we would live in. Imagine all the things that we can get done. Imagine the levels of successes we could reach. I mean, you feeling me on that, Danielle?
Hey, Christina, can you kind of explain what you mean by the 10x? I haven't seen that book, so it's kind of, you're losing me as far as 10xing. What's meant by that?
10 times all the activity. So if you have a goal to get your house clean today, right? What if you had a goal of getting your house clean and mowing the yard, right? So then you would be reaching for getting to mowing the yard. So if you fell short of mowing the yard, but you got the entire house clean, that's awesome, right? But if you didn't have a 10x mindset to go beyond cleaning the house, maybe you would only get the living room clean.
Okay, I got what you're saying. I think I'm following you. Awesome. Cool. Thanks for sharing that example.
Yeah, I'm there with you, Christina, and I love that idea because it's just like anything, a goal or a target. Like most of us, we're in some type of networking or business type marketing, and they teach us to have a set income goal. And if you push the target beyond that, so say you say, okay, I want to make $150,000 this year, but you only make $100,000 this year. You went beyond that just a little, and it gets you there, and you feel better. And I don't want to get too far ahead, but it's interesting how all of the different things we're going to talk about today kind of connect to that. And Christina, you're right on to something there.
Yeah, because it's essentially we're basically tricking our mind because we're telling our brain we've got to do more action to get to the 10x level goal. So that assures us to reach our minimum goals, if you will.
So kind of like when they say, shoot for the stars and then you could hit the moon or something along that line. It's kind of that
Boom.
saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
Totally.
I got you now. Jason, did you want to jump out? Oh, I thought you were unmuted.
Yeah, I'll step out for a second here. Yeah, I like what you're talking about there, Christine, Danielle. And exactly, shoot for the stars, and at least you'll end up in the clouds or somewhere above where you need to be. I thought this chapter was profound. I mean, I have to read through it a couple times because there's so much to it. It talks about the programming affecting your attitude, and then that affecting your feelings, and then that affecting your behavior. And a lot of times, I think in our consciousness, we going out throughout our day. At least for me, I'm not even realizing the connection between the where the I mean, I understand the programming is, and then kind of gives me, I'm not thinking it's giving me the attitude that's then giving me the feelings that's then directing my behavior. But I definitely have the certain feelings, like say, to take that example with Danielle. See, for me, I don't like setting goals like for money way too far out of my reach, because then it seems like, well, I can't even start to get there. But that's the feeling I'm getting. So now if I can change the programming and ask myself, well, why do I feel that's not obtainable? Why do I feel that that's out of my reach? And start drilling it down to the programming. And then I can understand where my attitude's coming from about the whole thing. And like Sandy was saying in one of her notes about how when you change the programming, then it sort of automatically changes your attitude. And then you start developing these better feelings in the same situation. So I just thought this whole sequence and how they put this together it's amazing. So I'm interested to hear more about what you guys think. Yeah.
Jason, that's a really good comment that you bring up, and it's one that I would think that most people, right, I kind of deal with, and that really kind of speaks to what's like you were saying, what's deeper in that, right? Because there's money attitudes. Maybe I don't deserve it. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe you're guilty, feeling like you shouldn't achieve such levels when someone else is struggling. Maybe there's fear that you will fall short of that goal. Maybe there's fear that you won't be able to maintain that money level. Maybe there's worry that other people are going to perceive you to be greedy or arrogant or what, like, those doubt, guilt, shame, and worries popping up, right? Maybe there's a lot to that, right? So that then starts to spark the negative chatter that we're talking about, and that negative chatter then turns into self-sabotaging inactivity, right? Well, I'm on a roll today. I'm feeling it. Y'all better slow me down. I'm gonna go on.
Hey, Christina, you just used the word inactivity, because that's part of where it comes from too in our behaviors. The first initial thing that most of us will do is go to the inactivity choice. And so, oh, it's getting too hot outside, and there was this or this happened, so we were talking about mowing the lawn a minute ago. We give ourselves excuses to behave a certain way, so then the actions and the feelings and everything else, it's amazing how they're all intertwined. We're getting deep here today. I love it.
So what if, Danielle and everybody else, what if you were to set the intention, right, and have the contract with yourself, I will not lie to myself. I'm always going to keep it real. If I choose, right, because everything is a choice. You have a choice in everything. Like saying I had no choice, like really we need to get rid of it because you have a choice. You may not like the options that you have, but you have a choice, right? So what if we were to say, have an agreement with ourselves? I won't lie to myself. I'm always going to keep it real. And if I make the choice not to do something, I'm going to keep it real, right? And recognize I'm choosing not to do this. Like I'm choosing to have a lazy day or whatever. And be unapologetic about that. But like, don't lie to yourself, right? Because your word is your deed. And if you start lying to yourself, which is something that we have, listen, I've lied to myself in the past, and I'm not saying that I never do anymore. I am saying that I'm seriously reprogramming myself such that when I do lie to myself, like it don't even feel like my body doesn't feel right. Like I get sick, right? I can't lie to myself anymore. So what if you made that your first action of just having a whole different contract with yourself and just stop lying to yourself? Imagine what kind of activity you could get done then.
I think that's a great point, Christina. And but I want to kind of talk a little bit more about this chapter and how each of these steps kind of plays together in order for us to end up getting the right taking the right actions and being having those behaviors that are good and working for us. Because what happens is that we, from what this is talking about, of course, it has these 5 steps, which 1 is programming, 2 is beliefs, 3 is attitudes, 4 is feelings, and 5 is actions. And, because a lot of times we'll make these goals and we'll say, okay, I'm going to accomplish, an extra 10,000 in home business income this year or something. Or maybe I'm going to lose, 30 pounds in the next 6 months. Or maybe I'm going to have a better relationship with my family. And so we know these things that we want to accomplish, and we say to ourselves, I'm committed, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this happen. And yet, what happens? We have these day-to-day things that come up, and we take the wrong action. We don't do the right thing. We have the incorrect behavior, and it's not because we don't have a strong desire to have that happen. I can tell you I've been wanting to lose weight for a while, right? And how many, let's just use that one. That was such a great example, right? Because everybody has that as something, or not everybody. I know there's some people out there that's the complete opposite, like my daughter. She's trying to gain weight, right? But the fact is that we know that we have these things that we're supposed to do, but we don't do them. So let's kind of talk about why that happens. And, so that way we can really work on those different things. And, of course, in the pre-mastermind chat, Sandy mentioned about the programming and how she's starting to recognize that programming, and that by recognizing the programming, you can make those changes. And if you can make the changes back here at the beginning, then all these other little things will fall into place over time. But we have to recognize where it comes from in the first place. And of course, let's kind of jump to the end of the chapter and then work our way back to the beginning. I know in this chapter it started with behaviors and then it worked its way back to the programming, but it starts with the programming. So how about we start there? What do you guys think? We kind of talk about that a little bit. I mean, we've talked about programming a little bit in the previous conversations, but to say why that, jump out. I know I'm just babbling now.
Samantha, you just brought up something and it cracked me up because it's so true what you just said about our weight. That's a great topic because it's very sensitive. And a lot of it comes from programming directly from our home influences, because our programming comes from so many different sources. And I'm watching my daughter kind of go through this right now because of her own self-image, because of the programming from TV, from advertising, from seeing how all of her other friends are able to wear certain clothes or dress a certain way, and then she can't do the same thing. It programs that belief about herself. And which goes on to all the other things we're talking about. Then the attitude, well, I'm not even going to try because I can't get skinny, and and then you get this bad attitude about it, and that attitude is coming from those emotions you feel about that. I'm not as pretty as them, and I don't like the way that it makes me feel when I'm around those other people that look good in those clothes, and I went and tried that same outfit on and it didn't look good on me. So it creates those feelings. So the actions is that, well, I just won't even bother to go in there again. I'm not going there again. I'm not going to that store. I'm not looking for that. So our actions proceed from that feeling. And then what are the results? And if, I think it'd be kind of cool if we brought different examples in of different things that happen in life and use that same formula, because we go through this same pattern with everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it's all the same source, though, right? I mean, literally, it comes back to how the love language that we have with ourselves that we've learned, and we learn it from our families, we learn it from our communities, we learn it from society, we learn it from media, we learn this love language. It's an unhealthy love language in many ways. So if you go back to the root of that, for example, I've been losing weight because I made the decision, right, to get to do the work to get back to the point of where I started loving Christina thoroughly, right? So rather than blustering about, I love me, but I'm sitting here stuffing unhealthy stuff in my mouth or not exercising, like, let's get to the root of why I stopped exercising. What were those negative chatters going on in my head? And too often when it comes to body image, we go a little we stop at the surface, right? Because it hurts so much. Like you said, Danielle, it's so personal. So we stop at the surface and we don't keep going underneath the surface to eradicate all of those things that caused us to have this next negative self-image.
Yeah, if I could jump in one more time on that, because I kind of left out a thought in there. I see my daughter go through this, and I'll use her as an example because it's so emotionally attached to how I felt about myself. I went through having a mom that programmed me to be conscious constantly. It was horrible as a teenager. I was just a mess because it was always like, you're not the right size or whatever. So I did the opposite. I don't say anything to my daughter except to really build her up and work on that. And it's outside programming too, but it's a choice. We're going to go into that a little bit more. And I feel you on this. I think this is probably for a lot of women. I don't know if men are the same. You guys might want to jump out on this, but I think a lot of us women, this is a huge one that we're programmed very deeply with.
Right. My mom had the chubby middle kid syndrome, and she projected on me all of her negative self-image feelings, and I took that in as a kid, and I progressively learned. I actually started using that as, I thought, a tool against everybody else telling me what I can't do, even if I'm chubby. So I'm going to be chubby to prove you I'll do it, and then I'll lose the dadgum weight, but then I won't keep the weight off, right? Like, how stupid was that? Like, it was crazy. I know, but I did it.
Yeah, go ahead, Donna. Go ahead, Dick.
I'm kind of I've listened. Go ahead. You want to go ahead, Dan? Now I'm kind of opposite of that. I had it's kind of strange. I've never had no problem with as far as, it's kind of strange when your thinking process, just like we said earlier. Everybody said some good stuff here. Remember I told you early on, I think it was a 3 months ago, I always would ask questions, and that always got me in trouble. I didn't have no problem about feeling like, I always felt like I was skinny mini. I was always called skinny mini, and I was like a toothpick. And I allowed those people to put that complex on me. But then as I began to learn that there's an instinct that we have, it's kind of like that natural instinct, as whether we're female or male or whatever, it doesn't matter. But when you start realizing this book, this chapter here, if I may real quick, it got me to thinking what some of you said there about let the influences. But see, the negative talk is what we got to where I've learned now to speak the positive thought and not be so conscious to what somebody says to me, like, okay, you can't do this, and then I start saying to myself, okay, I know they don't know any better right now, okay, so I'll just start kind of like dripping on them a little bit and say, ask questions again, going back to that, asking that question again. Are you sure about I don't know, or is that what you think? Again, this book says if you you always heard this. I heard it. I could never put it quite together. Like if you think you can, then you can. If you think you can't, then you can't. Now I'll be honest with you guys. I never quite could put that together until now, because now I understand what that saying is saying. Like Christina and you all said earlier, okay, if you're going to start with a lie, start with yourself. Start asking yourself, are you going to live a lie, or are you going to do this thing, or are you going to... And when you get that part straightened out, then you can go out and you can say, okay, I'm not going to listen to that thought process here. We're going to get this thing straightened out, because before I thought about this group 2 years ago. That's what I'm trying to say. I thought about this group 2 years ago. Where I'm at in life right now, I thought about 10 years ago. Does that make sense? Now I'm learning to understand the positive talk and not so much as what society has put on me. Because honestly, I have to say I'm proud of my parents, the way they taught me as a child, but it was the society that got me. And thank goodness I had that ground, that root, Sandy. Thank goodness I had that root deep inside of me from a child. That's what kind of that protected me. And so history's repeated itself. I'm learning now the positive talk. So that's what I was trying to say.
You're basically speaking to manifesting your positive thoughts. Were you gonna hop out, Dan?
Yeah. I didn't know if everyone was done, but we did skip over the last chapter, but there are some things in here. One thing here says your subconscious can only do for you what you and others tell it to do, and it says each of us is told no, or what we cannot do, tens of thousands of times. Each of those cannots was a directive to our subconscious minds, and as we, because of our conditioning, began to follow suit and to say similar cannots to ourselves, we fell into unconscious habit of programming ourselves in the same wrong way as did our parents, friends, and others around us. And so most of our average habit-formed everyday self-talk is the kind that we don't even notice. It is the kind that we say to ourselves silently without words. Much of our self-talk is made up of the quiet nudges of self-doubt, the unspoken fears of little or grand failures, and the nagging discomfort of knowing that things aren't right. And you guys are talking about body style and weight and all that. I went through that myself. I got really, I just call it fat. When I was like in the fourth grade, and I was from the fourth to the seventh grade, and then all of a sudden in the seventh grade I had a growth spurt. I kind of grew out of it, but I was always aware that I was heavier than other kids, and that type of thing, and that created a lot of discomfort. But then in the chapter we're in here, there's something else that he goes into, and just talking about being socially not. I'm looking for the word. It's not acceptable, but just in your own eyes, not being with it, so to speak. And I was always that way. I mean, I was a real wallflower. I used to go to these big parties and stuff like that. But as often as not, I would end up in the corner where I would have a wall on two sides of me, and I would observe. And I mean, I was kind of jealous of the people that were the life of the party and out there and seemed like they were having a great time and everything, but I just watched it at a distance. And even like doing this hangout and stuff like that, when I first started getting on this hangout, it was extremely uncomfortable, and it's comfortable now, but that's been a growing process, and So, I've talked about this a little bit before. I think that if you charted a person's life like a stock chart, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, and so it's where are you at that time in your life? Are you on a high, or are you going through a low? These peaks and these valleys that we all go through. And it's a natural progression, I think, that we all go through, and so you'll go through a low, but then what follows the low is some growth, and then you'll level off for a while, and then you might have another little bit of a low, but it's not quite as low as the last low was, and then you begin to grow some more, and so it's like a stock chart, and you can graph a person's life, their finances, or all these different things. If you put them on a graph and graph the highs and the lows, then it all depends on where you're at a certain time, because there's been other times when I have kind of been the life of the party, so to speak, when things was clicking and things was working and you felt good on the inside, So the question was earlier, why do we run into these roadblocks, and why do we do all these things? Well, I put a couple of different links. There's 2 books that I mentioned in the chat. One of them is it's called Focus on Your Dream, and by Jeffrey D. Smith. It's an excellent book. And this book here, The Secrets of Superselling, by Linnea Corson. Get that in there. And both of these are excellent books on programming yourself. Another one is, I didn't put in there, but the Power of the Subconscious Mind, by Joseph Murphy is an excellent book. And then I put a link in there to a Bob Proctor video that I watched yesterday. It's an excellent video. And Bob Proctor goes into so many things that answers so many of the questions that we all have. And he tells you on there, he talks about paradigms a lot. And paradigms are habits. And these habits are thoughts that are lodged in your subconscious mind that you're not even aware of anymore. You don't even know how they got there, but they're there nevertheless. And these are the things, these habits, these subconscious thoughts are the things that govern your life. And it's the same thing we're talking about in this book. So I'll hush up and I'll let somebody else flap their gums for a while.
Dan, your library must be amazing.
Okay, I'll flap my gums for a little bit. Cool? Okay. I didn't know if anybody was hopping out. This chapter has just brought up a whole bunch of mishmash from my childhood and sort of making me see different things on different levels, and reminiscent about a lot of stuff. So it reminded me when I was a teenager, I really wanted to go to college for music. I played guitar, I played viola, and some other instruments I was learning and dabbling in. And it was like an immediate no. You're not going to school for music. That's not a real life or a real job. You can't get a job with that. And so I ended up going to school and not knowing what I was going to school for. And I just became like this huge rebel. And I think we can either get stuck into a programming or we can rebel against it super strongly, and it's just as bad because I was just lost, and I was an alcoholic, and I was destructive to myself and to a lot of things around me. And so I went through that phase, and okay, I lived, I survived, here I am. I went to, after I graduated from school, I just picked a major, which was psychology, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. It was just like, I'm going to pick this because my parents put me in school and I have to pick something. So after school, it was like, then the parents telling me, well, you have to get a normal job. The 401k, the 9 to 5, that's what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, okay. At that point, I said, I'm an adult now, let me listen, they're right. And so I went to that, and my attitude at first and my feelings and belief behind that were like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing, this feels good. But then as I got into it after a couple years, it was like complete misery. And then so my attitude got bad. I hated my job. I was miserable. I started being late. I started drinking again. And it took me going back and going to that original programming and saying, what they're programming me to be is not who I am. And I had to really rehash and look at everything and go deep. And that's when I went back to school for acupuncture. That was the first time in my life where I said, I'm not listening to anybody else about what I'm going to do. I know what I want to do. You know, I didn't do music because of that. I didn't become a yoga instructor years ago because of that, or open a yoga studio like I wanted to do a couple decades ago or something, you know. So looking back, it's like, oh, I missed out on all these things because of the way I was programmed. But it takes that step to really look at it and say, okay, I need to make this change now and reprogram. And so now I'm doing what I love. And so, yeah, programming, did all of that. So.
Oh, that was such a great example, Sandy, because that, you know, it shows the progression of each of the different things, the programming and then the beliefs and then the attitude, and how your attitude can change when you realize that the beliefs and the programming are not what you wanted. And then all of a sudden you've got this negative attitude towards what you're doing, even though you think you should be doing it. And what happens then? Your feelings get unpleasant about it, and then your behavior towards it becomes negative, and then you're not getting a good result, right? So that was a great example. Anybody else want to jump out?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to throw this out too. I told you I was on a roll today, Samantha. You know, I'm reading this book called, can you see, Pay Me What I'm Worth, and it's by Soul Dancer. And in this chapter that we're on right now, we're doing like a worth timeline, basically. And so basically just rolling out like 10 feet worth of paper, like wrapping paper or something like that on the back of it, you can write on it, and just taking colored Post-it notes and plotting out, you know, things about your finances and things about, you know, relationships and all these different major areas in your life, right? And putting them on the piece of paper, right? And the goal of this exercise is really to identify patterns. And whew, Lord, have I identified some interesting patterns. So, and I wanted to bring this up as a way that everyone can. This is a tool that you can do, an exercise that you can do in your life to identify, because somebody said it a minute ago. There's things that we're not even conscious of. So, how do you bring things to your consciousness? And really, when you start plotting it out on that piece of paper, and one Post-it brings up another thought, kind of like Sandy was saying, which brings up another thought. Then over the time, you start to see your repeated patterns, right? So I've picked up on so many patterns. And you even, one thing that I've noticed about my timeline personally is I recognized when clearly things got too hard for me, like it got too painful for me to be consciously aware of what's going on in my life, whether it be finances, relationships, or otherwise. And I have big blank out spots, right? And those are the absolute times in my life when I started to devalue myself, when I started to mute myself and I wasn't speaking as much, when I wasn't allowing myself to shine as much, when I wasn't showing my gifts and my skills and my passions as much. It's powerful when you can do it and see it and become conscious of it. That's all.
I love that. Marlene says, finding who you are, saying what you want, finding who you are, saying what you want, not others. True key, Sandy. Awesome. Thanks, Marlene. I wanted to mention one of the comments that Marlene put in the pre-mastermind discussion about, let's see what I read. Let me jump over there really quick because I think this is an important thing. She was talking about the word change and how change can actually, you know, if you're thinking about changing, it can be hard. So she says the word change is such a motivator to not do anything if you are a procrastinator. And so not willing to give up behavior or willing to even look at your attitudes and behaviors creates a procrastination or the fear of actually being successful. And, you know, I wanted to bring that up because, again, it comes back to a belief, right? You know, if we believe that change is hard, then we're going to have that, we're going to have the belief that it's going to be a difficult journey for us to overcome. We're going to have the attitude that everything that we do is going to be unpleasant. We're going to have feelings that are going to make us not want to do stuff. And then, of course, we're not going to do things, which is going to be that action side of it. So I think that was really important to bring that up. But I wanted to say thank you for everybody who added added to that process. Does anybody else have a good example of how just the programming to just like, I think this is great how we're just kind of sharing some different examples of how this has played out in our lives.
I'll jump out again. I just had an example popped into my mind, and I've actually talked about this a little bit in the past, but it's probably been 20 years ago or something like that, and I had a whole bunch of work I had to get done that day, and I was down. I felt crappy. Life sucked. Everything hurt. You know, go on and on and on. Wah, 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 you know, but I had this pile of woodwork. I was a painter, and I had this pile of woodwork. I had to get it sanded. I had to get it sprayed with lacquer that day before I could go home. And I just stood there for like 2 hours, and I just stared at this pile of woodwork, and I was immobile. I couldn't move. I literally, I was so exhausted. I've been working so many hours for so long, and just literally, I wanted to go home. I needed to go home. I needed to rest. I had this pile of work I had to get through before I could go home, and I couldn't do it. I was totally immobilized. And I started thinking about a Bible verse that David wrote in the Psalms. It's a statement. He says, "Why so downcast, O my soul? Put your hope in God." And what he was actually doing was he was talking to himself in a form of self-talk, and he was changing his own mental attitude about what he was going through at the time. And I started, really thinking about that verse. Why so downcast, O my soul? And I started speaking to myself. Physically, building myself up, taking that time and giving myself self-chatter that was positive. And before too long, I grabbed a sanding block and I started sanding my first piece of wood, and just kept saying and just kept talking and talking and talking to myself, programming myself with that verse. And for too long, I was feeling good, sanding my woodwork, getting it sprayed, and it was like a pivotal point for me. And things afterwards, not only that day, but the following week, the following month, the following year, it was a change. It was a point of contact, I suppose, or a pivotal point in my life of change, where just the act of me physically speaking out loud to myself, programming myself, and I already knew a lot of this stuff because I'd been already studying this stuff for a number of years prior to that. But it was just, I don't know. I mean, I had just a crappy point in life, okay, and I could have chose to stay there and wallow in it, but I found that when I actually began to speak to myself, speaking out loud, programming myself with the thoughts that I chose to think, not the thoughts that just drift through your mind, because we all have these thoughts that just drift through, but a point of contact of choosing the thoughts that I was going to think, planting them as a seed, and then watering them, fertilizing them, allowing them to grow. That doing that, taking charge, taking command of the way that I thought and the words that I spoke, it was a change, and it was a pivotal point, and made all the difference in the world for me. So just pass that along.
I like that, Dan. That's taking personal responsibility for your own life. I like how you talked about, we passed over this last chapter, but I want to draw attention to the format of this book. The format of this book is actually changing our programming as we speak. So you have a chance, as we talk about it, or as we read the book, I should say, you have a chance to go back and read through the chapter 7 again, and any of these chapters. That's going to do you well, because it's programming us to believe that programming will cause us to believe whatever we want it to cause us, whatever we want it to cause in our lives, and that's really powerful and kind of cuts right to the core of it. But I also wanted to say that there's what it's doing. What I learned in college a little bit about short-term and long-term memory is it's basically the same thing of what this reprogramming is. You put the words or phrases into your short-term memory, and the more times it goes around in your short-term memory, then the longer it does that, the more it will be ingrained into your long-term memory. And it's like a song that you hear over the radio enough times, and before long you're hearing it one day and you can't get it out of your head, and it just sort of takes on a life of its own. So we can use that to our own advantage, and that's kind of what this is training us to do. And that brings up a point that came up when you guys were speaking, and how when you start to say, you start a project, like you're going out to work on your woodwork, and all of a sudden you get at that blockage, you get stopped. And when it goes back into the sequence, there's that attitude thing again that gives you the feelings. We're acting upon the feelings, but there's an attitude underneath that that's giving us those feelings. And so if we can, the reprogramming is supposed to help us change our attitude. But what I wanted to bring up is sometimes, when we were kids, we were told, oh, you have a bad attitude, or you need to have a good attitude. And a lot of times if they say, well, you have a bad attitude, it's like, no, I've got a good attitude. But I just realized when you guys were talking that we can have a great attitude until that one trigger happens. Of the work, all of a sudden we think we got to shoot that video, or we got to do this work that's supposed to happen. All of a sudden our attitude changes. Our attitude, and we don't recognize the attitude change. All we recognize is the feeling. We just sense the feeling, and then we're like, whoa, why am I having this feeling? But our attitude has changed because there's some programming deep inside that's saying, hold on, wait, are you ready for this? Is this a good time? Does something else need to be done first? All these extra stuff that distracts us. But to go on further, I wanted to say, like you're talking about taking responsibility for yourself, that can be seen as, like someone was talking about change, and that being also can be kind of a negative, because nobody likes change. And also responsibility, we've kind of been programmed like, taking responsibility for something means that we're in trouble for something, right? Well, in this case, being able to take responsibility for this, now that we have these tools and we have strategies to handle it, it's empowering. It's actually the opportunity to make the change and to give yourself that, to direct yourself into that pivotal moment. And so I wanted to bring that out because sometimes it can be really discouraging when we're doing this stuff. I don't know about any of you, but I've been getting kind of some psychological whiplash from I'm telling myself one thing, and then my old programming saying, just popping up and telling me another, and then it's like, no, I gotta, wrestle it to the ground and, get a hold on it. So, it can be discouraging, but when you think about how empowering it is to now know that, hey, we can address these certain underlying things, and it will all fold out in a positive way for us. We're acquiring the tools to make the changes in our lives, and we get to choose that. And if we have failed in the past, and we dig down and we figure out what it is that what the failure was, we can use these strategies, these tactics, and the laws of success. Like I study, Think and Grow Rich, and the laws of success principle. One thing that has really helped me out, I dug down to some issues of my past where it seemed to me when I look back that I didn't have any control over it. And taking responsibility for it only made me sad, But until I discovered the laws of success and I could apply those and say, well, I could go back and say, well, what didn't I do correctly? And that gave me, I was like, okay, it doesn't change anything about the past, but at least for the future, now I know, okay, well, I need to be sure to do this. One thing I didn't do in my past was I didn't speak my vision into the world. And so nobody knew what it was that I wanted to accomplish. And people follow you for your vision. People follow you for what what they believe you're about. And if you don't speak that into the world, if you don't tell people about it, then they don't even know to follow you. So that was very empowering for me to be able to step back into that and just make that realization, and then put these laws into effect to really give myself the power to believe that if the situation ever comes up again, I can handle it and I know what to do. So thanks. I'll let someone else speak. Sorry for going too long.
That was good stuff. Samantha said she has the train going by, and we have 2 minutes left, so I guess we can wrap up. But I'm going to read from the page first, a couple comments. Let's see, where did we last leave off? I told you, Dan, I'm going to check that video out. I love Bob. Marlene, keep on shining. Christina. Marcia says, yes, to see it helps me to become aware. Heron says, Dan, thanks for sharing your book list. Oh, and Jason, I said, good point. That's why it's important to read books like this and surround ourselves with people who are programmed the way we desire to be. Then we are reprogrammed. Yay. Christina says, thanks, Marlene. I sure will. And Dan says, great points, Jason. So I guess we can wrap it up if anyone else wants to hop out before we go. And Samantha, if your train stopped coming by, I guess you can hop out.
Thanks for sharing that, Jason. And I
Uh-oh, looks like we've got
She's
somebody
frozen.
frozen here. Yeah. Did you want to add something else, Christina? I just think today was such a great conversation. And Jason, I really appreciate all of the comments you just made. Wow. You always say you put everything together so thoughtfully when you express yourself. And all I can say is wow, because it was so good.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's so great to be here, like you said, like they were saying, surrounding yourself with wonderful, like-minded people that are all interested in bettering ourselves is it's wonderful. And growing up, I just didn't have this, so I'm so thankful for all of you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, kind of a final thought. I put a little bit in the pre-discussion about I've got a little garden out here, and we planted some tomatoes, we got some zucchini and a few other things, and the really interesting thing is that what we planted, we're reaping. Okay, so we planted tomatoes, and we're eating tomatoes off those vines. Okay, we planted zucchini, and now we're eating zucchinis off those vines. And the words that you speak, look at those as a seed, and your heart. Today we talk about the subconscious mind. In the Bible, it talks about the heart. It talks about it a lot. And I believe that what the Bible is talking about in the heart and the subconscious mind is the same thing. And every word that you speak, you are listening. Okay? And it goes directly, you got outer ears and got inner ears. And every word you speak, you hear more with your inner ears than you do it with your outer ears. And if you've ever recorded something and heard yourself speak, you say, well, that's not me. That doesn't sound like me. It's because you're hearing it only with your outer ears and not hearing it with your inner ears. So everything that you speak sets up a vibration on the inside as bone conduction, and it's fed directly into your heart, into your subconscious mind. And so every word that you speak is as a seed, just like those tomatoes that we planted, the zucchinis that we planted. And you reap what you sow. And so it's just as powerful for the negative, it's just as powerful for evil as what it is for good and for positive. And so it's a matter of recognizing what kind of seeds are you planting into the garden spot, the soil of your heart or your subconscious mind. And your heart or your subconscious mind is the power center. And that's where the power comes from. Your head is a goal setter, it's filled with hope, but the power comes from your heart. The power comes from the subconscious mind. And so these positive thoughts that we have, or these negative thoughts that we have, that boil up from our subconscious mind, that puts us into this action habit here. So behavior, creates your feelings create your attitudes create your beliefs create your, and it all comes from programming. So your programming creates your beliefs, which creates your attitudes, which creates your feelings, which creates your behavior. It all starts with the programming. So it's the words that you speak, it's the choice that you make of what you're going to plant in the garden spot, or your subconscious mind, or the soil of your heart, that's going to grow there. It's going to lodge, and it's going to grow, and it's going to bear fruit, just like our tomatoes, just like our zucchini plants. And that's what you're going to dine on, so to speak. That's what you're going to eat. That's the harvest that you're going to get. So it's a matter of choosing the thoughts that you plant, fertilizing them, watering them, tending them, just like that garden, and really, really taking the care of what thoughts that you think and what words that you say, and really guarding your speech. So I'm done.
Could I say one quick final thought before you go, Samantha? For those who are listening, if the thing that really helped me in reading this book, going back, say, don't blame anything on anybody. When we, as ourselves, get over that, like that blame, because I was guilty of that. That was one of my downfalls, was sabotaging myself to blame everything, to have a complex, and not let my voice, be comfortable with my voice, be comfortable with who I am. Just don't blame anybody, because it's nobody's fault. The fault is in ourselves if we don't learn to listen and question everything. Everything. Okay, I'm done.
Is that everybody? Raise your hand if you still have something else you want to add. Nope. Okay. All right, guys, this has been a great conversation, and I just want to remind those of you who are still kind of catching up, or you're still trying to get an idea of what we're talking about, read this chapter. So this is chapter, what do we say, it's chapter 8. Let me get there. Yep. Okay, this is chapter 8 of What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter, and it talks about these 5 different steps that control your success or failure. So you want to make sure that you fully understand those and how they each play into themselves. And of course, when you can begin recognizing those actions that you're taking are not beneficial to whatever result you're going to get, then you can work your way back through the actions, the feelings, the attitudes, the beliefs, and the programming. And then next week, what we're going to start talking about is the self-talk that can help you reprogram yourself. So we're going to be talking about the 5 levels of self-talk and how you can begin to really take control of your own inner thoughts so that you can reprogram yourself to get the results that you want. So if you guys want to meet us back here next week, 10 a.m. Eastern, SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. Again, that's SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. Please like this video if you found it helpful or useful. Share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Google+. It's just look for us. It's the Mindset Mastery Collective. Join our community, which is MindsetMasteryCollective.com, and connect with us. And the more that we work together and we mastermind like this, the better, the more insights that each of us will have, and the better results that we're going to get in our life. So with that, have a great day, have an awesome and amazing weekend, and if you'd like to get email reminders for the Saturday Morning Mastermind, I'm going to post.
I think she was going to say she'll be posting that into the group. So again, thanks everybody.